Alright, so now when we play our game, we can move around. We have the basic mechanics of being able to jump around and go on the platforms. But when I go over to the edge and I fall, I just fall forever, right? The game doesn't do anything. So it's not really a game because we can't win or lose. And because I'm a pessimist, we're going to work on this one, the losing first. We're going to make it so we can die, alright? So, to do that, first thing I need to do is to go ahead and create a new object. We're going to create an empty. Create empty. And we're going to call it the fall box. And this is just going to be, and I'm going to zero this out here. Just 0, 0, 0. Great. And then I'm just going to add a trigger to it. So I'm going to go to Physics 2D. Box Collider 2D. I know my interface looks a little bit different because I switched halfway between. I'll probably switch back again in the next one. It's just, there's reasons for it, but don't worry about it. Anyway, so I'm going to click on Edit Collider, and I'm just going to pull this down here. Doesn't really matter how far down you pull it, to be honest. And we'll pull this here, and then pull this out here, and pull this out here. We just need to be large enough that the player can't possibly jump past it, okay? So as long as, no matter what, so this will be adjust, once you, there's other ways of doing this, but we're going to do it this way. Once you like make more of the level, you'll have to extend this, but for now it's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and say good, and make it a trigger. Great. Now we're going to need basically our 2 more scripts. We could do it with just 1 script, but we're going to do it with 2, alright? So I made this a trigger, that's good. What I'm going to do is I want to make a script that we're going to use later on more, but for now, we're going to make a script called player stat script. Because this script is meant for the player controller, meaning like the inputs and making it move. You generally want to make each script control really only kind of like a focused thing. I don't want to put stuff in here that deals with like picking up stuff or health or things like that, because those don't deal with controlling it. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another script. I'm going to right click in here, create C# script, and we're going to call it player stats script. Oops, script. Okay. And go ahead and open that up once it's good to go. Double click, and it's going to open up. Hopefully, if you've got your Microsoft Visual Studio Code functioning properly, you can make that work. So we're going to do this. This is going to be used for a couple of things here, but what I'm going to do basically, just to get the idea of it, let me click back on this while that's opening up. Come on. All right, maybe if I just minimize you, there we go. What we're going to do is I'm going to make on the box, I'm going to make a trigger, and what it's going to do is going to say kill the player, and it's going to send that information to this player stats script, okay? That's how we're going to control it. So the player stats script are going to hold our lives, and so it's going to hold our lives, and so we're going to use it also to add and remove our lives. So right on the top here, just going to get rid of these comments. I don't really need those. I'm just going to go ahead and add a public int, and we're going to say player lives total. And let's go ahead and just set that to a value of 3 to start with, okay? We can change it later on if we want, but 3 seems to be kind of the typical what you would expect. Okay, so that's going to hold a number of lives. I need one other variable in here, and we'll just make this private because no one else needs access to it. And what I want to do is I want to be able to store the start position. And the reason why is that I want when my player dies, it gets reset to the start position as long as he has lives. So what I need to do is I need to save wherever I'm starting so that when he falls down here, I say go to that spot. Okay, so we need to make a variable that's going to hold it. So it's going to be a private vector2 because it's a 2D game, so it needs an X and a Y. It's 2 numbers. It's a vector2. And we're just going to call it, lowercase, player start position, like that, okay? And the first thing we're going to do is right on start here, I'm going to go ahead and just store the player start position right here, okay? So player start position, and I'm going to set it equal to, and this is going to be transform.position, semicolon, okay? So player start position is just an empty vector that can hold an X and a Y, and all I'm going to do is give it the transform the position. So if you look over here, you'll see when I'm on the player, I haven't attached it yet. You see there's transform, position. So I'm just literally going to put these two numbers into it. And so wherever I put this player, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to take these two numbers and put them inside of player start position. So if I ever need that again, which I will when I die, I can plop them up in there. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is I don't need an update in this one. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to put in a player life death. So basically this will add or remove lives to our player. That's the idea. And what I'm going to do, and we haven't done this before, so you notice that this obviously is a function, right? So there's void, and then there's these parentheses, okay? So the parentheses, the parentheses hold parameters, and the void does a different thing. So you know it's a function because it has start, and then it has this void, and it has this. The void means that when this function runs, it doesn't send anything out. Void means send nothing. So when I call this function, although I'm not calling it, it gets called automatically when the game starts. We'll use this one as an example. When this player death gets called, okay, it's not going to send something back to calls it, right? So this doesn't get run unless I write player life death like this, okay? It doesn't get called unless I call that function. So the void means that when I call it, it's not going to send anything back to me. It's literally just going to run it, and that's it. Otherwise, what would happen is that this would expect me to send something back to it, and it's not. So void just means send nothing. You'll see later on, occasionally we do send things back. Most of the time, we just have the function run. The parameters, those do the opposite. So you can look at void here as the output. The parameters are the input, which means that when I call this function, I can send it information, and they go inside of here. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write int and life. Now, you might have already noticed that when we do the trigger, we do collider 2D COL, and that's because when that function gets run, it sends it that variable of what it runs into, the collider. Okay, so but in here, I'm going to call this variable, and when I call it, I'm going to send it an int, meaning a whole number from -3 to 255, whatever, right? And I'm going to send it that number. And the reason why I want to do that is that if I send it a positive number, I'm going to have it add 1 to it. So let's say I have a life of 3. If I send it a positive 1, it'll make it 4. But if I want to kill the player, I'm going to send it a negative number. So I'll send -1, and this 3 will become 2. So that's what this is for, okay? We don't need this. I was just showing you that. All right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is actually put in the script here. So we did that. Okay, good. Yep. So what I'm going to do is right off the bat, we're just going to say player lives total, and it's going to be plus equals life. So this is just a shortcut to say player lives total is going to be equal to player lives total, so whatever it currently is, plus life. And if you remember, life, it'll either be a -1 or a +1, or we could do more. We could have it like you gain 2 lives. But basically, it's going to add that number that I send to it. So whenever I call this function, I'm going to send it. Or if it's a -1, you know what I mean, then it will kill the player. Okay, so that's what that's for. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to say if the player lives total is greater than -1, we're going to go ahead and have you do stuff. Okay, so basically if the player is still alive. Now, the reason why I don't do if it's greater than 0 is because I can have 0 lives left, right, and still be playing. I just don't have any more lives. So basically if I go past 0, if I go to -1, then we're no good. So that's what I'm saying. If the player lives is greater than -1. So meaning we can go down to 0. Otherwise, it would be 3, 2, well, because we initially would have the 3 go down. So you want -1. All right. So as long as we're still alive, what I'm going to have you do, so this is first going to add or remove our lives, okay? What we're going to do is this. We're going to say if life is equal to -1, I'm going to have you go ahead and take the transform dot position, instead of equal to the player start position. Okay. So basically, if it runs through and it's a positive number, it'll take the player lives and it will add 1, right? And that's fine. Then it'll say, okay, are we great? Obviously, we would be. And then it will go in here. And if life, that number that's sent to us, would be a positive 1. So this wouldn't be true. Because we say equal equals means that this life number, if I send me -1, then it's going to go ahead and it's going to restart my position. Okay? So basically, I have to still be alive, and I have to be taking a life away, and then it's going to reset my position. Otherwise, it doesn't need to do this. It wouldn't really matter. If I'm just adding a life, it doesn't have to reset my position. I wouldn't want it to, right? So I only want this to happen if my player life is -1. Okay, so that's going to be if we're still alive, okay? Else, if we're not still alive, we're going to go ahead and do else. Do that. Okay. Tab. Oops. Only one tab, I guess. We're just going to go ahead and do application.quit. And this isn't very sexy, but basically what it's going to do is it's going to it's literally just going to close the program. So if we run out of lives, literally the program just goes boop and it turns off. Now, this isn't a good solution. We'll figure something out better later on. But for now, this will do. We just need something to let us know we died. Now, unfortunately, that will not work while you're in here. But if I build the game, I do file build, and I actually play the executable or whatever it's going to be on, this will work. It just won't work while in Unity. So you won't really see this working. Actually, let's do this too, just to kind of, before that, let's do a debug dot log, and we'll just say loser. Okay, and that way we'll also on the console it'll say loser when we play the game, and that'll be helpful. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Now, you may or may not have seen what the issue is with this, is that this never runs. There's nothing to tell this to run. So we need to tell this to run, and to do that, we're going to make another script. Currently, we don't have anything that's adding or removing lives, but I did make this fall box that I want to do that, right? And it's got to wait for this to recompile. And I'm going to pause it while it takes a break. Great. Okay. So I need something to call that function. So I'm going to go ahead and take the player stat script. I'm going to drag it up onto player. Just click on player and make sure it's down here. Good. Player stat script. All right. So drag it up there, and we're going to make a new script. Right click, create, C# script. And we're just going to call this, I like to call it Deathbox script. And the reason why I call it Deathbox is that I can use this for killing the player in anything. We're going to use it on this fall death, but I could put it on an enemy, I could put it on spikes, I could just put this on whatever, and it will just take away a life. Instead of having to like make it specifically for fall, I'll just use it for all sorts of stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click to open that up. This thing's being pretty junky. Double click to open it up, and hopefully it'll open up in here. Great. So excited about that. And there it goes, Deathbox script. Woohoo! And this is actually going to be relatively simple. So we do not need both of these. In fact, we don't need either one of them, but I'm going to keep the first one to start with. Oh, also notice when I made this player stat script, oh, I didn't do it. See how it says void player death? I actually need to make this public. Because right now this function will only run inside of this script, and nobody else can see it. If I make it public, just like we do with the variables, that everybody can see the variables, if I make it public, other scripts can access it. So I have to make this public. But it also means that no other script can have a method or a function named player life death. So this has to be a unique name like throughout the whole game. Okay, so I'm just going to go over here, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to call that. Okay, so instead of start, this is going to be for our, this is going to be on a trigger. So we're just going to do void on trigger enter 2D, and then it's going to be collider 2D COL. So when this function gets called, it's going to be sent in its parameters here a collider of what it hits, and we're just going to go ahead and call it COL. Okay, that's how that works. Okay, so now all we're going to do is we are going to test the thing that we're hitting against. Okay, so we're just going to say if COL.tag is equal, and we're going to say player, I want you to run what's in here. Now this isn't going to work quite yet. Go back here, select the player, and if you look, the player doesn't have a tag to test, right? So just like when we did ground script and I made all these things, these platforms, they all have ground, and then that way when ground check tests, it will, when this trigger runs, it tests whether it's a ground, that it has a ground tag. I'm going to have that when we run into this object, it's going to test that we are the player. So there's already one called player. We don't have to make a unique one like we did last time. So I'm just going to say player. All right, just so you realize what that is. Now we're going to do, okay, so we said if it is the player, what we are going to do is go COL, because that's the object we just hit, but it's the collider. So now I want to grab the game object of it. So I'm kind of like moving in a different position. Then in the game object, I want to do a get component, and then the component I want to get is the player stats script. Player stats script. Okay. Now I'm inside the player stats script. So basically, we're navigating through. So we're starting off with the object that we hit, which will be the collider. But then I want to go to the game object of the collider. Then in the game object, I want you to grab the component player stat script. Now, in the player stat script, I want you to run that player life death function that we made, and I need to send it a number. Now, we're killing the player, so I'm going to send it a -1 to tell it to remove it. Watch when I don't put something in there. Watch, it turns red. And that's because, if you hover over it, I should tell you, we're not sending it an argument. So on this side, when you call a function, it's called an argument. On this side, it's called a parameter, okay? So we're going to send it a number. We're going to send it -1. And let's just clean this up a little bit. And Control S. And now, when we go over here, it's not going to do anything initially. It will in a moment once it compiles. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to put the death box script right ahead and put that on fall. Let's see, did that work? It did. Okay. And I was also getting error. So assets error, player stat script, player life death int, and is accessible due to its protection level. Interesting. Can I clear that out? I cannot. Okay. So let's go back to player stat script and public void player life death. Maybe I didn't save it. Let's go back here and see. You know what? I think I didn't save it because I had hit, I had just changed it randomly and I didn't save afterwards. So let's see. This should hopefully remove that. There you go. So you can see it actually told me that you can't get to it because of its protection level because it wasn't public. So now, when we go to play this, it should make me wait. 2020 version runs so much better than 2019. Makes you wait every time, which is great. Okay. Now when I go over here and I go like that, you can see it resets at where my start position is. Right? Like so. Until it doesn't. And you can see it says loser. So when I run out of lives, it goes ahead and it kills me. Okay. So that is set up. And that actually sets up a couple of things because now that we have this player stat script, I can put lives on there and power-ups and whatever else I want. Just to keep track of the player's information, okay? And the next one we'll do is we will make it so we can win the game.